All right, this is a warning to you never Trumpers out there who don't like them. Charlie Gasparino is back with us. Get a nasty email when you come on. And I think it hurts me because I get dragged
You
down.
always get the feeling that the people that are giving us nasty emails, after they do that, they scream, "Mom, I need the meatloaf!"
They're nuts. Well, whatever.
Anyway, we do have breaking news here.
Yes, and it concerns Joe Biden.
Yeah, the former vice president is telling Wall Street associates that he's seriously considering a run for president in 2020. So what's interesting about this is that
he's Wall Street guys.
Yeah, he's going to his Wall Street friends, associates. He has a lot of connections there, people that would raise money for him, and saying, "Listen, I am seriously considering running for president, but only if one candidate runs, and that's Donald Trump." Why is it contingent on Trump? And Trump has made statements that he's probably going to run. He's already hired a campaign manager for 2020. It's because of the age. What Biden is telling people is that if Trump decided not to run, if something happens and he goes up against a Kasich or maybe Mike Pence, the age difference, Biden would be 78, I believe, in 2020,
is that right?
Or going on 78.
Wow.
He would be
How old is President Trump? 71?
Yeah, Trump would be 74.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he said the age difference between he and Trump is not that great. Age won't be an issue, but if he does go against a Kasich or a Pence, that would be an issue. So he is actually saying this. He's going around to Wall Street guys, and by the way, Wall Street guys always like Trump, always like Biden. They've given him money in the past, and you remember, Biden really thought he would be a better candidate than Hillary Clinton last time around. He thought he could. He's told people he could have beaten Trump. So he really is still holding on to that.
He's run for president a couple of times himself.
Absolutely,
didn't work out with that one.
And is this written in stone? Obviously not. Right. But he's telling people he's seriously considering it. Trump is the factor.
Well, he has the name recognition.
We do have a statement from
Power Network.
Yeah, and he does. And we do have a statement from Biden's PR person, which doesn't deny it. We should put it up on the screen. Sure. It was he basically said, "Listen, hasn't made up his mind yet." But when I ran everything by him, Bill Russo, the flag for Biden, basically said, "I have no comment." So this is he's clearly moving in that direction.
I guess all of these prominent names, Biden chief among them, was the vice president of the United States. You'd be foolish not to consider it. Yeah. And if you know it's going to be a fielder's choice with, dozens of interested Democrats pondering a run, they all have a shot.
The theory is that if Biden throws his hat in the ring, the others will back out. Just because he is, I've bounced this off a couple of political consultants, he is someone who could theoretically take the various wings of the Democratic Party and unite them. I mean, he was President Obama, a progressive president, vice president. He's known as a guy who appeals to blue-collar whites. It's a way of galvanizing the party. He is thinking. One reason why he's seriously thinking about it. He's looking at President Trump's approval ratings, which have gone up lately. Still not great. Right. He thinks he's vulnerable in a lot of areas.
Would he have any of the halo effect that President Obama did, though? You remember the rap for Democrats with President Obama is they did very well in elections where he was running. Not so well when he was not on the ballot.
Yeah, I think that's one thing. And the other thing is this. All these guys look great until they actually run.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, when you actually go in there and Joe Biden has to, is going to be questioned about stuff in his past, some statements that he made in the past, and he made a lot of crazy statements. Then he becomes less popular.
Rare is it that the early favorite or the most recognized name ends up being the nominee.
Yeah, and he's not declaring. The interesting thing about
in 2008 was Hillary's nomination to lose, right?
Yeah, and what's interesting about this, and take it for what it's worth. Sure. I mean, he's telling people if he does do it, it's all contingent on Trump running. It's in the back of Joe Biden's head and a lot of people that President Trump might not do it in 2020. I'm not saying he might not. He's telling people he is. But, when you talk to people that are close to Trump, I talk to a lot of friends of his who turn around and say, I could see him walking away, just going back to his old life.
I don't see that. I think he likes the plane. I think he likes going back and forth there, but I think he likes people going live to him at Joint Base.
He likes
Andrews.
He likes what his Twitter feed does.
Yeah, it's a great deal of power.
But anyway, Biden, if you talk to these Wall Street guys, and maybe, it's a degree of interpretation.
Understood.
They think if Trump runs, they think he's in.
All right, buddy, thank you.
78-year-old. He'd be 78. Right. It's pretty.
Well, I like to say, 50, 60, it's the new 20.
Yeah.
Think about it.